he was receiving messages from her that she was considering suicide that night. She was very, very upset about some things that were going on. And I just happened to check my email at like midnight on a Saturday. Who knows why I was doing that? But I got this email from him, and he had tried to reach out to our state resources, but given the time and his limitations on communicating from Singapore, he could not get through to anybody. But I was able to get it, and in time reached out to that town police department. And they actually went to the home and performed a wellness check on that child, and she was able to get to CCMC that night. She really did need intervention. So I really encourage you, like I said, do take it seriously, communicate with people. He was worried. He's a good example of what you're speaking of. He was worried about sharing the information that she was going to be mad that her parents wouldn't believe her, that she may not continue being friends with him. And he didn't care at that point. He was just so worried about her life. And later on that week, he continued to communicate with me, again from Singapore, and was saying, I haven't heard from her. I don't know what's going on, and I hope she's okay. And I explained the laws of health privacy here to him, but just said, just continue sending her brief messages, letting her know that you're thinking of her, that you wish her well, and eventually she'll reconnect. And she did reconnect with him, and although she was initially agitated, was very, very happy that he reached out for help for her when she couldn't. So I would just encourage people, continue to share this message. The same message we're sharing tonight is to encourage people to talk and to really try and connect. So much is said. I'm an administrator now, but many, many years I was doing direct service in hospitals. And so much is said by body language, by facial expressions, and just connect with people that way. Even if they're not saying anything, they may physically be showing it. So.
Hi, I'm Steve Hargis from East Lyme High School. I've noticed in your graphs, and I've seen many other presentations that speak to this subject, and it always intrigues me. I've never asked this question, that the male rate seems to be significantly higher, almost statistically higher. And is it because of our gender's lack of ability to communicate well, so that people can't listen, or what is that the trend and why?
Sure. Well, going back to those graphs, I don't know if would it be helpful to, I could do that really quickly. But anyway, in the deaths, you would see a higher incidence of males, but in the attempts, you see it in females. And so the reason for that has to do with the choice of means. In Connecticut, actually, there's less of a disparity between male and female. Has to do with our access to the most lethal means, gun law, the guns. And we have very strict gun laws in our state compared to other states. And so actually, comparatively, in terms of methods, suffocation and gun utilization are almost equal in our state. But it's typically because males will choose more lethal means versus females will choose overdose. And it's more survivable attempt.
I think there is something to be said, though, too, for a male bravado. One of the cruel ironies in my family story is that my father, a longtime college professor and licensed psychologist, could not get through to his own son. And my mother took that particularly hard, that her husband could not see in his own son what the issues were. So even those that appear most qualified with a doctorate from Brown University as a psychologist can't necessarily prevent it, or may not even choose to see it because of issues of bravado. My son doesn't have problems. My son doesn't need help, and I deal with the mentally ill. He's not mentally ill, so I think that might be a consideration too.
There was one other piece I was going to share too, and that's a very good point. Also, in the risk factors, I don't know if you picked up on this when I had that slide up, but there are certain cultures and social norms that impact males differently than females. And one is, like you were saying when you were up here, about the sharing and acknowledging possibly that it's a weakness. It's a stigma around not so much mental illness, but just mental stress. And, this is one of those norms that often the military is dealing with right now. It's very difficult to change that and, to change the stigma. And it's also not just the military, but the police and other law enforcement around those norms. So, again, I think that definitely, because there are more males in those cultures, often that also is true about that population.
Hi, my name is Tina Yakubu. 2 years ago, I found my son. He hugged my son. There's so many questions going through my mind right now, so much that I want to say. One of the things with my son, he worked for the Department of Corrections. In 3 more years, he would have retired. He was struggling on and off for years. He was getting help. He was on medication. But he feared that he'd lose his job. And he was so afraid that if his superiors found out that he had problems, that he was on medication, that he would lose his job. And I know that in the Department of Corrections, just since he's passed, 3 others have died the same way. Something has to be done in the Department of Corrections. Mm-hmm. These people have to know that they can get help, that if they have to go into rehab, it's okay. And maybe it won't work the first time. Maybe it'll take 2 times. I mean, the Army does it, the military does it. When they see their young soldiers with problems, with addictions or whatever, they help them. They don't kick them out. They give them a chance. That happened to him. He left 3 beautiful children. His son attempted suicide after he lost his dad. But he's doing better now. It's been a long road for him. It's been hard. And you talked about missing your brother. 15 years. Is that what you said?
It'll be 15 years.
It'll be 15
this
years.
Thanksgiving.
I keep wondering if I'll ever, I know I'll always miss him, but I don't know that it'll not always be extremely painful.
I will tell you that every year it's a little easier. It doesn't mean the day doesn't go by when I don't think about it, but I think about it less. It used to be my first thought the minute I was up for probably a year and a half.
Yes.
And one of the things that saved me is my wife. And when I said, for better or for worse, she has stuck by me. And then with the birth of our 2 children, it's been sort of a rebirth for our family. It will get easier, I think, every year, but you have to put yourself first. And if you need help yourself, to talk to someone about it. If you haven't done that, that should be a consideration.
Well, I kind of, to be honest with you, I kind of thought that this meeting tonight was also going to address helping the survivors of suicide.
Well, I mentioned that term, and that's a whole other consideration. There are certainly support groups, and I know Ann can provide information. You can speak about it without any reservations tonight because we know what you're dealing with. But that's a different factor that some other instances of grief don't need to consider. So you're onto something. I mean, that's we have a shared existence now that's a little different than the typical loss.
A sad club.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very.
It's real. You're not imagining things. It's real.
Yeah.
Can I respond to your DOC, your
Please.
Challenge?
Yes, please.
First of all, I'm very sorry for your loss. And I just want to say that we, and Ann can attest to this, and Judy in the audience, that the Suicide Advisory Board really embraces the survivors. And when I say that, I mean it sincerely. And any of you are always welcome, as I said, but we really do consider you our guiding lights through all of this work. So please join us. And I know that the Department of Corrections has been working very diligently lately to try and figure out not only how to address, they're very concerned about their staff, even almost more so right now, because there's so many more restrictions on their inmates. They're very concerned about the staff, and I'm sure that your son is one of the people they've talked to us about.
It's a very depressing job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, this is what they see every day, you know, these prisoners, and they see the sorrow and the pain, and to go to work like that and have to deal with that, and to work doubles and trying to just cover it all and raise a family. And then to have a problem, real problem. You know, you talk about they're not always willing to talk. The lady back there. You know, I have so many flashbacks when you've said that about my son. When I'd say to him, Matt, are you all right? You know, I mean, Mom, don't worry about me. I would never commit suicide. I don't have the courage. It takes courage to commit suicide, and he didn't make a joke out of it, you know. And of course, I wanted to believe that, you know. I have so many what ifs left, you know, if I had said this, if I had done this. I did listen. I was there. I saw the signs, and I still couldn't stop it.
I think one of the things that I always try to remember is that my brother was an adult. He was 25 years old.
Yes, as was my son. He was 41.
And
yeah.
I was home for Thanksgiving the day before his suicide, and before going to work that night, we had a family argument at dinner, and I took a car ride with him, and we're in Cape Cod, went by the Kennedy compound, and we spoke, and I made it clear to him that you need to reach out to me and my wife Gail before you consider anything, and that we're here to support you, and yes, 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 yes. And then, of course, within 12 hours, he made the decision. So the message is I've come to realize, and I've also come to realize this about my mother and her dealing with the grief, you can only control another adult's behavior so much, even if it's your son. You have to let that go to some degree, because you cannot dictate another adult's behavior. It's really different hard with a teen and a child under your roof, but you have to release it somehow, because it'll make you second guess, and that'll drive you crazy.
I definitely think that what Ann will share about the support groups will be very helpful to you, and I would encourage you to connect with me and the group, and I can connect you to DOC. And if you're willing to work with, they have a committee that they're working very seriously to try and address this problem. The challenge with this work is you have to get organized to get going, and unfortunately, you know, as John just mentioned, sometimes you do lose people. I mean, most suicide can be prevented, but there still is free will, and you can't control everyone. And it's very difficult while you're getting organized and getting ready and putting these things in place to continue losing people. So
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Judy Murray, and first of all, I want to say how much I appreciate what the Dagles are doing, and more people should speak out about this problem. My issue is a little bit different. My son committed suicide in May of this year, and it was a different set of circumstances. He had no problem telling myself and his friends that he was going to kill himself, and we would beg him, and I tried for 2 years to get him help. He was an adult. He was 23 years old, and he did not want to go to the hospital. He did not want medication, and the police would come by. I would call crisis lines. I would call his own therapist, and they did nothing. They'd come by, and he would say, "No, I'm fine. Nope, I'm not going to hurt anybody." He was hearing voices to kill himself and kill others. For 2 years, I fought to get him in the hospital, and no one would listen to me. In May the end of April, I finally got a judge to court order him into the psychiatric unit, and they let him go in 9 days, still hearing voices, and he killed himself 2 weeks later. So there is a huge issue with the services and with the system, and it's very broken. So you have someone that was crying out for help to the wrong people because we couldn't help him. But the right people could have if they just listened to his loved ones. So that's a real problem, and I just wanted to put that out there, that there is another issue. Thank you.
Can I respond? Judy, thanks for sharing that. I know that you've spoken with our Commissioner, Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, about this issue, and there's a huge disparity between access to services and the kinds of services that are provided through private insurance and public insurance, and that you're trying to bring attention to that as an advocate, and thank you for that. I can tell you also that we're very cognizant of the need for better resources, both financial, human tools that help us assess whether someone is truly suicidal, and not just based on history. A lot of the work that, or the tools that have historically been used is just based on behavior. Past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. You can never tell what someone's going to do except for just how they've been in the past. Now the new models are really looking at people's intent, what is behind their thoughts and their feelings, and trying to engage them. But again, it is very difficult if someone is not sharing. I mean, maybe in your son's case, he was sharing that information. But a clinician is only as good as the person who's sitting in front of them is, if they're sharing the information and being forthcoming with that, and they can only work with what they have. So,
He was sharing
yeah,
in the hospital.
yeah.
He was sharing, and the insurance ran out. So
Yep. Lots of work to be done.
Anybody else? The reason we're here is when Brian took his life, he was alone. 6 hours earlier, he was at a party with about 7 or 8 friends. 2 hours earlier, he was Skyping with friends back here in East Lyme. An hour before he took his life, he was having a cigar with his friend before he went to bed. And then he took his life. So he was alone. And the reason we're here is to try and communicate through our personal stories, through what we have from professional statistics and offerings, that you have to reach out, no matter how much they say no. I never talked to my son about suicide. My son had anxiety. We got him help. We tried to get him help. But we never imagined that he was at a place where he was going to take his own life. He was the happy-go-lucky kid. You heard Ainsley. He befriended everyone who crossed his path and the ones he went off his path to meet. And there's people in this room that we never would have met and got to know if Brian hadn't taken his own life. I wish I had never met the people in this room who lost someone from suicide for this reason. For other reasons, for the goodness, for the kindness, for the support they've given me and our family, neighbors, friends, people from across the state, people from out of state. Good people. Take that goodness and reach out to the others. Communicate. We saved one life. That's what we're trying to do, one at a time. And I on behalf of my family, and you heard Ann, she's the muscle behind this. She does all the legwork. And we just can't thank enough Andrea, John, and Ainsley for coming out, sharing your knowledge, your experiences with the folks here tonight, and hopefully there'll be many more who can watch this on tape. It's an important cause. Since Brian died, there's been 120,000 people in this country who have taken their lives. It's just a staggering number. And how many more who have attempted and have failed. We want more to fail, and we want even more not to attempt. So I want to thank you, and please, if you didn't feel like talking publicly, our guests will be around. Ann and I will be around. There's probably too many suicide survivors in this room tonight. We all have something in common, and we do support each other, and we're here to support anyone who needs help, and we'd ask you to do the same. So if you would please join me in a round of applause for our panel, I'd appreciate it. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Dave Putton, East Lyme Parks and Rec, Youth Services. Brian was an employee at the Parks and Rec. He loved it. He loved working with the other kids. And Dave's been outstanding in carrying on Brian's legacy. And that's what we want to do, carry on his helping hand that he gave to so many. And we'll ask our fellow citizens, neighbors, friends to do the same to as many folks as you can. So thank you all again for joining us tonight. We appreciate it very, very much.
I can't top that. Thank you for sharing, all of you, your courage and your strength. And let's have a little bit of water and cookies, and we'll maybe try to keep this conversation going. Thank you.